quintessential start to any Zoom leading a presentation. Tyler, yes, I'm getting a nod from Tyler. Awesome. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us here today. My name is Ben White. I am director of the Builders Lab program here at Terner Labs, and I'm joined by my colleague Tyler Poland, who is the senior technical advisor for the Builders Lab, as well as my colleague Geraldine Slevin, who is the communications manager for Terner Labs broadly. So looking forward to the conversation today, and thank you all so much for being here. I know time is valuable, so I really appreciate it. So start pretty simple, right? Our mission is simple, though of course the path to complete it and to get there will be a bit more complex. But the Builders Lab mission is we want to scale industrialized construction innovations, but address the urgent housing crisis with greater efficiency, lower costs, and improved sustainability. So we'll start off today's conversation really by giving you just some more background on Terner Labs, who we are, what we aim to accomplish, and then we'll discuss, why we're launching the Builders Lab specifically, which is a new program of Terner Labs, and we'll also give you all a bit of a window into the application process. By the way, if you have any questions, we're going to address them at the end, but feel free to throw them into the Q&A feature, which should be at the bottom of your Zoom window. And we'll be between the three of us will be monitoring the questions, and we'll be sure to get them all answered by the end of the session. So about Terner Labs. So the Terner Center for Housing Innovation at UC Berkeley and Terner Labs are actually sister organizations. So we're separate organizations, but we share a lot of infrastructure. We share knowledge between our two organizations, networks, and expertise as well. So the Terner Center for Housing Innovation at UC Berkeley is a housing research and policy organization whose timely analysis and data-driven research helps policymakers, practitioners, and advocates, really folks across public, private, and academic sectors to advance bold strategies that address the housing crisis. And Terner Labs, the Terner Center was founded in 2015. Terner Labs was founded in 2020, complement the work of the Terner Center. And Terner Labs, we scale critical innovation at the intersection of housing affordability, equity, and sustainability. So while separate, these two organizations are separate. The two entities share an advisory board. We share executive leadership, including our CEO, Ben Metcalf, various staff members. We share good times with each other, and we also share an office in downtown Oakland. So participants in Terner Labs programs, including the Builders Lab, are actually able to access the research and policy experts at the Terner Center for guidance on organizational and policy issues. So we're focusing today on Terner Labs, which is where the Builders Lab is housed. So Terner Labs, we create transformative programs, platforms, and connections between entrepreneurs and experts to build effective solutions for system-level change. In addition to the Builders Lab, Terner also runs the Housing Venture Lab and the Data Solutions Lab. So Terner Labs' founding program is the Housing Venture Lab. It's a cohort-based accelerator that provides wraparound support for entrepreneurs with new, bold ideas to make housing more equitable and accessible, including innovation in financial technology and home ownership. Meanwhile, our Data Solutions Lab offers the Housing Policy Simulator, which is a technology tool that allows city planning departments and their collaborators to be able to visualize the effects of housing and zoning policy on their ability to meet their housing goals. And today, we will focus on the Builders Lab. And I'll actually turn it over to Tyler to discuss why we're launching the Builders Lab.
Successful unmute. Hello, I'm Tyler. For those who don't know, I've been researching innovative industrialized construction for 7+ years, both here and abroad, with a background in engineering and housing policy. And then I've been at Terner Center and Labs for the last 4 years now. So this is sort of my wheelhouse. The super short summary that I won't spend much time on is we're doing this for all of the obvious reasons that you are probably also doing what you do. I'm sure the McKinsey graph on the right looks very familiar to everyone. In short, we're doing it because we need to. We need more housing more quickly, lower costs, and with minimal environmental impact, and with a shrinking pool of skilled labor to boot. So the status quo is untenable to meet any or all of those demands at once. And innovation we see is a critical part of addressing all of those things simultaneously. If you want to go to the next slide. we think there's been obviously promising momentum that we want to take advantage of. The private industry has reinvigorated the charge with offsite construction in the last 10 or 20 years. From our own research and my own research, there's been at least 150 companies in the US started in the last 1 to 2 decades, kind of reinvigorating this effort and then leveraging a lot of significant investment from venture and other capital to push the construction industry forward. Simultaneously, and this is even more recent, there's been a lot of public sector growth, both interest, but also some burgeoning investment. And that includes local, state, and federal governments, Department of Energy, State of California, State of Colorado, Oregon. A bunch of efforts have been put forth, but they're also sort of dipping their foot into the water here and still with a lot of dynamism in how they move forward. And so there's been a lot of growth on both public and private sector. There's also been a lot of high profile failures that loom fairly large for the companies doing this innovative work, but also the public sector and private sector industry partners that are hoping to adopt more innovation, but wary of the risk involved. And so that's why we think we're fairly well poised to play a part here. Amidst all of this, Terner, both center and the labs, are a trusted connecting node between public, private, and academic efforts. And we have direct experience leveraging that to drive multi-pronged change in this complex housing industry. So I'll toss it back to Ben to share more on our proven ability to push things forward in that regard.
All right, thanks, Tyler. So the Builders Lab, we're a new program, but we are building on Terner Labs' existing track record, network, as well as our affiliation with Terner Center. So Terner Labs' first program, the Housing Venture Lab, has graduated 22 companies across 4 annual cohorts since being founded in 2020. And these companies have gone on to raise nearly $500 million in follow-on funding, which is awesome, especially in this funding environment. And amongst our Housing Lab alums is Asusu, which helps renters to build credit by reporting rent payments to credit bureaus. And Asusu is currently valued at over $1 billion at Series B. So we have our first unicorn in the Terner Labs alumni community, and hopefully more to come. And we're also proud to support founders of all backgrounds, including those who are currently underrepresented in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we're proud to share that more than half of our Housing Venture Lab alumni companies have been led by Black folks, Indigenous folks, and people of color. We've also had a number of companies come through the Housing Venture Lab whose primary innovation was in architecture, engineering, construction, and or development. These include Frolic, which is based in Seattle. Frolic supports missing middle housing development in relatively low density contexts. PitSwitch here in the Bay Area, which takes a componentized approach to delivering building retrofits. Module based in Pittsburgh, which builds prefabricated energy efficient homes, and Prefab ADU, which delivers prefabricated accessory dwelling units throughout the Bay Area. So if you can't tell from that description of where everyone is located, we are a national program and are looking for applications from folks across the states. And so working with these companies and supporting their success really helped us to realize that there was an opportunity to build something a bit more tailored to their needs as innovators in how we build. And then finally, we benefit from the relationship with the Terner Center. So the Terner Center at UC Berkeley, it's really a leading, I would argue, maybe the leading voice on housing policy and outcomes, and have put out groundbreaking research on affordability metrics, housing construction costs, zoning, and much, much more. Our colleagues who we share an office with, and you probably will see walking behind Tyler while he sits in that phone booth, are frequently sought after for quotes in publications like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the San Francisco Chronicle, as well as speaking engagements at conferences throughout the country. And Terner Labs, actually in coordination with Terner Center, was selected by the U.S. Housing and Urban Development Department, or HUD, as the key private sector partner for a year-long housing innovation series that included webinars of incredible guest speakers, and culminated in an in-person conference in DC in June that me and Tyler had the opportunity to go to and to speak at. which was to kick off the Innovative Housing Showcase. And if you've never been to the Innovative Housing Showcase, I highly recommend you go. It happens annually on the National Mall. Basically, the National Mall gets covered in accessory dwelling units and tiny homes right between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument. And it's a really great opportunity to show folks who are visiting, these quintessential attractions in the middle of the nation's capital what the future of housing can look like. And I'm proud to say that Terner was a part of that programming. So given all this, Terner Labs is uniquely positioned to launch something new, a catalytic initiative in industrialized construction, the Builders Lab. So how will the Builders Lab work? Well, for a select cohort of emerging and innovative organizations, we will offer access to a community of peers in an interdisciplinary network, as well as support within your various regional ecosystems across the states. We also will offer opportunities to inform relevant research and policy conversations in coordination with our colleagues at the Terner Center. And then finally, we'll offer a range of supportive programming, including a 2-day retreat in the Bay Area, 70 hours of expert coaching time for cohort members spread over 9 months. So that works out to about an hour a week, and it's coordinated between cohort member and their assigned coach. An international study tour with dates and locations to be determined. Most likely it'll be UK and Sweden. The UK and Sweden, it will be in late April or early May of next year, as well as 6 to 7 virtual workshops, including relevant guest speakers. There we go. So this is the team that's bringing the Builders Lab to life. Probably the key thing to just hit home here is that we are bringing a range of experiences across academia, the private and public sectors, as well as across various knowledge domains, including building science, housing development, investment, and policy. I'm Ben. My experience has mainly been in real estate private equity and investment, as well as economic development. And then my colleague Tyler has deep research experience in industrialized construction, as well as a broad network of contacts across the sector. Thankful to have Michelle as the Chief Strategy Officer of Terner Labs. Michelle was actually the founding program director of the Housing Venture Lab, so from whom we take a lot of inspiration. And so it's great to have her on board as we launch something new. And then Ben Metcalf is at the helm. He's the CEO of Terner Labs, as well as the managing director of the Terner Center. In his super extensive career, probably be a 30-minute presentation in and of itself, but it includes appointed positions at California's HCD, as well as he was an appointed official at the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So also really proud to share this slide because this group of people has really been coming together and coalescing in the last couple of weeks, which is awesome. So we have an incredible array of advisors and supporters. Our supporting organizations include the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, or CZI, and JP Morgan Chase. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so it's great to have the development support of these two massive institutions that are very much aligned with our goal of being able to build better and deliver housing more efficiently. Our program advisors and selection committee members include diverse professionals representing different parts of the housing delivery ecosystem, including Antonia Soler Blasco from equipment manufacturer Hilti. She's also the founder, or one of the co-founders of Women in Construction Tech, and is just generally a well-respected person in all things construction tech in the Bay Area and beyond. Professor Iris Tomline, who is a guru of all things lean construction and a professor at UC Berkeley. She's also the director of the Production Systems Lab. Joe Kirchhoffer, lean construction guru, or excuse me, one of the nation's, he's a senior vice president at Avalon Bay Communities based here in the Bay. And folks on this call probably know Avalon Bay is one of the largest and most respected multifamily operators and investors in the country. I think I missed Fope Badamosi, who is a construction researcher at Autodesk. She's a PhD. Really thankful to have her on board, bringing the perspective of one of the largest software providers in design and construction. Lisa Fulman from internationally renowned architecture firm SOM. Mason Darrell Gunter, who is from, some folks on this call might know Elemental Accelerator. It's a pioneering venture philanthropy and clean tech innovation platform. And then finally, Shanti Pless, who's a senior building energy researcher at DOE's Terner Lab out in Colorado. And he looks specifically at the intersection of energy efficient homes and homes that are delivered using industrialized construction techniques. So really thankful to have them on board, especially as the conversation around the housing crisis and our energy and climate crises really start to come together and align. And so you can see here, folks are really representing different parts of the housing delivery ecosystem, and we anticipate having additional representation from a contractor and an affordable housing developer as we look towards starting our program officially this fall. So now I'll turn it to Tyler to talk about the application cycle itself. Over to you, Tyler.
Thank you, thank you. Second successful unmute in a row. Look at me go. So I'll give an important preface here that basically everything on this slide is going to be a guideline. So there are stuff we're looking for based on the research we've done, based research I've done, and we've done through Terner Center in the space, but also our own values and interests, but by no means are they rigid. So some of the examples of types of applicants we could include and have designed some of the programming around direct manufacturers pretty intuitively, folks actually producing building elements, whether that's volumetric modular, panelized, kit of parts, approaches, choose your vocabulary of choice or approach of choice. All of those are very much in the wheelhouse of what we're looking for. Those doing demand aggregation, so the folks not necessarily doing manufacturing themselves, but providing a pipeline to feed the beast, as it were, of factory production. Software providers obviously have a huge role to play in this space through supply chain management or process flows or design, interoperability and optimization. Any folks in that space looking to support IC sector growth are definitely in-house, or someone doing just workforce development programs. There are vast unmet workforce needs in the IC sector, both on the factory floor, even though it's lower skilled, it's still skilled, but also in the factory office. Folks who know how to design for industrialized engineering systems that also know architecture design are few and far between. So folks really focusing on growing the workforce in that space could also very much be under the umbrella of Builders Lab eligibility. You could click to the next paragraph. So the staging of companies, we imagine the people most likely to apply would be post-prototype and post-revenue, but still early stage enough to have some big key strategic decisions to make, or by extension, folks who maybe are middle stage, however you want to define that, but exploring a significant pivot that they want to kind of incubate and work through during their time in the Builders Lab. And then lastly, on the actual themes we're most excited about, anyone who addresses one or more of the following, of course, isn't guaranteed to be the perfect fit. But what we're particularly looking for, I think, are folks focusing on decarbonization in various ways. That could mean lowering embodied carbon and material waste. It could be focusing on super high energy efficient buildings, or it could be just proliferating urban infill typologies that are less urban sprawly, which we know has vast impacts on decarbonization at the urban scale. Also looking at folks that are really emphasizing modularity, however they meet that task, whether that's having design flexibility or market flexibility with their process platform, or interoperability across building systems within a building. So MEP, like vertically integrated building, but also we see digitalization as potentially a huge tool here, whether that's integrated within your company or you're providing that as a service to other manufacturing producers. That is, I think, a key leverage point that we've found in our research. And then lastly, and intuitively, folks really having a focus on affordability to the ultimate residents of the units that they're building or supporting being built is something we're hugely valuing here at Terner. So again, none of these are super rigid. If you don't fit any or all of these categories, there's still a chance that we could find you really interesting and provide a lot of the resources to you through the Builders Lab that are helpful. If you're really on the fringe, feel free to follow up with us and ask us what we think. But overall, we've made the application intentionally short. So our general answer, I can give you the spoiler now, is apply, and we'll see how it pans out. And then as a direct extension of that, how we're actually looking at companies, trying to score for companies that might not fit the exact mold we're looking for was difficult. But the rough 5 categories that we're going through and scoring on a 1 to 5 point scale each, somewhat qualitatively. The first 2 are fairly intuitive: concept and technical feasibility, whether or not we think the technology works; strength of the business model, whether or not we think the business has profitability using the technology and model it's going off of. Then the 3, 4, and 5 bullets are a little bit more squishy, but still really important to us. So impact potential generally refers to the kind of different contextual factors that make a certain company or technology scalable. This basically allows us to account for something that has unique implications for policy change, which is one of our important levers we think we can pull. So in that sense, your company doesn't need to try and completely revolutionize the entire industry with a single swing or on its own. But if there's some unique partnership model you're pursuing or some open source knowledge creation that you're pushing that other companies or regions can learn and grow from, we'll account for it in this category. Strength of team, essentially how the experience of the key leadership and other staff reflect and support the goals of the company. And then lastly, the fit with the Builders Lab, though I definitely say we've kept an open net in terms of companies we're willing to accept. We're also very cognizant that we only want to accept companies that we have the capacity and resources to support in-house, but also through our extended advisor network. And so we're actively considering in the screening process the fit with the Builders Lab, what our goals are and what we have the capacity to support. And then lastly, just going through the timeline, if you want to click to the next slide. So a little bit of insight into the screening process itself. So it's going to be 3 stages. The first stage, we're going to start screening this week, hopefully, and that's going through those 5 criteria I just went through above, and that's using only the material you submitted in the application. Stage 2, which will be some sub-selection of companies, will be a follow-up but short interview with key leadership, and then potential follow-up questions. And then stage 3, which we are scoping to happen through August, will be any remaining follow-up questions and then some very brief potential reference checks with the finalists at that stage, potential clients or key partners that we'll follow up with just to finalize our due diligence. All of this is to lead up, hopefully, to an early fall cohort announcement and finalization. And then the programming will start. So 9 months from there will follow us through the 2-day workshop Ben mentioned in the Bay Area in the late fall, the international study trip in May with a bunch of workshops in between, and then April or May, I should say, for the international trip. And then finally the June showcase, probably aligned with HUD's Innovation Showcase, but they don't decide the date for that till later. So there's plenty of content in there. And just because we're here, I'll also say the earlier you get your application in, the more we get time to look at it, which is good for us and bandwidth, but also good for you. The closer look we get to take at your material, the more we get to consider the world of potential from partnering and including in our cohort. So I believe that's our last slide. So as Ben mentioned at the top, keep the questions in the chat. This makes it easier to potentially answer more than one at once and make best use of everyone's time. But otherwise, thank you for this. We're excited to chat and hopefully see a lot of your applications in.
Yes, thank you all so much. So I'm opening up the question and answer here. Let's see here. Ooh, here's a good one.
We could probably stop sharing screen, Ben.
Yeah. So Ben Silverman asks, what do you define as industrialized construction? Anything prefabricated at a manufacturing facility? And Tyler, I will let you take this one because I know this is something I
answer this question a lot. And industrialized construction is almost an intentionally vague term. So probably anything prefabricated definitely fits under the category. The reason I use industrialized construction rather than prefab or offsite specifically is because I think there's a huge range of things we can do to on-site construction to industrialize it. And there have even been a good number of efforts to industrialize on-site construction and bring a lot of the technology and principles of prefabrication to the site itself. So if you're doing anything prefabricated, I think it's more safe to say you're a good fit. But if you say you are kind of charging yourself with the impetus of improving productivity on site workflows or other means of improving standardization and productivity in construction industry, whether that's a design software or something else, I still think you'd fit under our banner. So we've really, especially this first round, because we haven't had a full round of IC focused applicants yet, are keeping as broad a net as we can. We expect to learn a lot from who applies and what's happening in the industry. And so if you still think you're on the border of what is maybe innovative or industrialized construction, reach out to us. But
Yeah, and I'll say just to add to that, because I saw Ben, you had a follow-up question about your company's focused on decarbonization, modularity, and affordability for deep energy retrofits. We are including that in this broad definition of industrialized construction, right? It's because there's still like a manufacturing component. You're trying to, accomplish these retrofits at scale. And as I think has been highlighted, probably more so in the last couple of years than since these two crises have been identified separately, the housing and climate crises are very much intertwined. So no, that definitely would be a fit. And I would say you also asked about being post-prototype in the midst of your first pilot project. As Tyler mentioned, we have these guidelines around what we're looking for stage-wise and in terms of what a company's revenue looks like, how many units they've delivered, if that's the way that you measure output or outcomes for your product, but they're guidelines. And we've already spoken, as we were creating our figuring out what the program design for the Builders Lab would look like and understanding, who is sort of out there already and innovating in all things future of construction, future of building for homes. We've come across companies that we're really excited about who don't quite fit within those guidelines, and we really hope that they apply. So there's no sort of strict barrier on either ends of, super early stage to mid stage or pre-revenue to post-revenue. Hopefully that answers your question.
And I'll add to that too, something I didn't emphasize in the presentation is we have the scoring criteria that are obviously applied on a per applicant basis, but a lot of the stage 2 and 3 of narrowing it down, especially to our final cohort, is about the mix of cohort. So there might be some individually extremely strong candidates, but a lot of our special sauce, I guess, so to speak, with Housing Venture Lab is curating a small cohort of companies whose key leadership, but also business models complement each other really well to create a lot of opportunity for learning within the cohort. And so it's not a perfect science, but that also gives us even more leeway to consider someone who's later than stage within our guidelines or earlier than stage within our guidelines.
Yeah, yeah. Someone asked about what about a manufacturer that's catering to rural and tribal communities, i.e. not infill? Yes, we would be interested. And I know that Tyler, you had talked about, some of the themes that we are excited about. One of them included urban infill topologies, but that's not meant to be exclusive, right? And I'm still learning more about how the housing crisis is felt, outside of cities and the surrounding suburbs. Like there's a housing crisis ongoing in rural areas as well, and finding creative ways and innovative ways to help solve it is really important. So yeah, that would definitely be a welcome application. Let's see, the questions keep coming through. All right, let's see. What is the desired cohort size? So typically the Housing Venture Lab has had cohorts of 5 or 6. So we're looking at most likely 5 companies, potentially 6, depending on just what the composition of our application pipeline looks like. And, at the end of the day, as we, start to home in on what the final cohort looks like, there's going to be a lot of really great companies that will be in that final pool. And one of the things that we have to think about is like the diversity of the cohort in terms of the types of products that they offer, the services that they offer, regional diversity. So, that'll play a role as you think about the final composition of that cohort. And that's sort of why we're leaving the size open. Most likely it'll be 5. It could be 6, depending on who is in that final pool. Let's see. The only on-site requirement is the 2-day Bay Area seminar, plus, of course, the international trip. Yes, that's right. Now, there may be, I'm sure there will be applicants coming from the Bay Area. So who knows, there could be opportunities to connect in person, sort of outside of those more fixed aspects of the program. The only on-site requirements are the 2-day Bay Area retreat in the fall, and then the international trip in April or May of next year.
I'll mention, because I saw it in another question, those are indeed travel expenses paid. Flights, hotel, everything in between is paid for those. For I think up to 2 key leadership of each company. There's maybe potential to bring a 3rd or 4th person with caveats, but only the first 2 are paid for.
Let's see. When should applications realistically arrive to have a good chance of being considered? July 9th seems sufficient. So our application is open until August 2nd. So if you send in an application on August 1st, we will look at it, but we will have more time to look at it if you get it in earlier. And as Tyler mentioned, there's multiple stages to the applications, and we very well could start interviewing folks who have applied early. We've had some folks already apply, even on the day that we open. We could start interviewing them before the application closes, just because we've seen them and we feel like there's something there. They're a strong candidate, and we want to move them to the next stage. So the application was deliberately designed to be as low lift as possible. I think it could take maybe an hour and a half, maybe even shorter, just depending on what materials you already have ready that you could sort of copy and paste or attach to the application. So it should be relatively low lift. We encourage folks to apply as early as you can. And yeah, July 19th, but maybe you could do July 9th. There's more hours in the day today. No, I'm kidding. But thanks for the question.
And I'll mention too that my beginning of research into this space started out just by screening companies on their website and public facing material. So I've seen hundreds of company websites and have gathered a lot of, we'll call them skills, in like figuring out what is a real idea and where there is substance or where there might not be. All that to say, I wouldn't put too much effort or like utmost anxiety into getting the perfect wording or answer in every question of the application. Obviously, represent yourself accurately and as best you can. But if you're worried about like framing it in the perfect way that fits our criteria and stuff we posted on the site, I think more important just to get the substance of your application in, and we can read between the lines of what companies are or are not offering something real and promising. That too is part of our special sauce, I think. So yeah, minimize anxiety on wordsmithing.
Yeah. Someone asks, can it be an international company? That's a good question. So it can be an international company. And I guess how you define, like, what is the definition of an international company? You could sort of frame it in a bunch of different ways. I think the sort of TLDR is you should have a presence in the United States, or in your application should be, we should walk away from reading your application with a deep level of conviction that you will move to the United States, or you will have a presence in the United States, even if you're not currently operating here. So you could have headquarters elsewhere, right? Like, that's all fine. You could have factory, maybe you're offshoring or nearshoring the manufacturing, whatever it might be. But we are looking to see outcomes that impact the housing crisis here in the USA. All right, let's see. Can we share who is reviewing the applications? Yes. So the application process will include there's the stages that Tyler mentioned. And so at the first stage, where we are reviewing applications and creating, investment memoranda, we're not investing, but it's sort of a similar concept if you've ever been in a PE firm or a VC firm. At that stage, it'll be me, Tyler, and perhaps one or two graduate students that are affiliated with UC Berkeley. And then as we move to the next couple of stages, it'll be the folks who are on that selection committee slide. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
Seeing a good one at the top, our very first question. You get an award, Ben Silverman. Between the coaching and the virtual workshops, what skills, knowledge, training is focused on? Great question. I'd say we have a baseline curriculum of what the 6 to 7 workshops could focus on. Fairly intuitive stuff. So there's one that's on potential technical problems in designing for multiple markets or design standardization in general. There's one on finding customer market fit and communicating that to customers, whether you're a B2B or a B2C company. There's one on the potential for open source standards, so encouraging interoperability between softwares, but also manufacturers themselves. All of these are kind of placeholders. We have some friends of the Builders Lab kind of in our wingspan, I guess, that are waiting to be plugged in if those become relevant. We're also waiting to put a final pin in those because we don't know our ultimate cohort. So we have some topics that we expect to be relevant to the cohort, regardless of its makeup, but we're also holding some flexibility in the back pocket in case there's some unique opportunities for workshop topics we haven't thought about yet.
Let's see what else here. I assume 3D printing in a factory is a good fit. I already submitted an application. Yeah, that's definitely a good fit for an application. Thank you for submitting it. If there's anyone else out there who's innovating in that technology specifically, yes, you would welcome an application. What else here?
Ooh, John Fay. Hey, friend. What are some success stories of the previous cohort? So this is the first Builders Lab cohort, to be clear. So whoever applies and gets into the cohort is our first success story. But for the Housing Venture Lab, some of the companies that are definitely Builders Lab relevant, like Module, KitSwitch, that Ben White mentioned. I think everyone kind of has their own success story. Another part of the flip side of having a super wide net and inviting a wide variety of companies to apply with the Housing Venture Lab, but I think the same will be true for us, is that the goals are really curated to each company. So the first month of the program, once the cohort is announced, is specifying your specific coach or coaches, if that's the case, and setting out your milestones for the 9-month program. Like, what are your goals? Tends to reflect what are the biggest problems you're focused on, which will come out in the application process as well. And so for some companies, the big success was building their second, more or less still pilot project. For some companies, it was getting on a big project, going from 1 to 2 pilot units to 20 in KitSwitch's case. But all of that's flexible and gets worked out with your coaches and with us in the first month of the cohort. So we basically, though we do love that we can say we had a unicorn in Housing Venture Lab, we don't expect every company to be unicorn. I hope not every company is unicorn in the Builders Lab.
Which of these other, are there any geographic TRL, what's that stand for? Or size related qualifications for applicants? Tyler, do you know what TRL stands for?
Technology readiness level. I don't know the origin, but Department of Energy uses it a lot.
Yes. Okay. So this person may have joined a little later and maybe missed that first slide. So there's definitely, we're looking for folks who are post prototype. If your end product is like a physical unit of housing, or maybe it's a piece of equipment for manufacturing or robotics innovation. So we're looking for post prototype, size related, and then we're looking for, if you want to use sort of VC speak, seed stage to Series A companies. So I know there's like stats out there that are escaping me at the moment around what that looks like in terms of annual recurring revenue or number of employees, but those are sort of like general guidelines. But again, I want to emphasize that these are our guidelines, and there's definitely organizations on either end of those two sort of barriers that we're excited to see apply. So hopefully that, and then in terms of geography, We are based here in the Bay Area. It's kind of interesting, working on this initiative here in the Bay where there's a lot of innovation and excitement around climate and climate technology, and also like the housing crisis is felt, I think, particularly acutely right here in our backyard. So we think that's actually a real asset to us as a program and to the folks who will join our cohort. All of that said, we are looking for companies from across country. We have relationships and partnerships all the way up to the federal level, as well as with local municipalities and authorities having jurisdiction outside of California. So we're really looking for a regionally diverse group of organizations to apply and ultimately be a part of our first cohort.
And as a segue to Jerry's question, is there space for participation by housing operators, or how can someone who wants to use the products of this work to become engaged? Basically, just reach out to us. We have a already strong, but I think still growing list of strategic partners, even longer list of just friends of the Builders Lab that keep abreast of what we're doing and that we constantly engage for potential opportunities for collaboration, whether that's with an individual company or with a cohort-wide opportunity. We're super open to that. Again, we see a lot of the value we bring as being a connector node between comically fragmented building and housing industry and also people trying to innovate in this space. So reach out to us and we'll talk about how we can work together.
So our colleague Michelle pinged me I think this is in response to a question earlier about some of the success stories from previous cohort members. And as Tyler mentioned, this is the first cohort for the Builders Lab, but there was actually one of the companies that went through the Housing Venture Lab that probably would have been a Builders Lab company had we been around. It was called Module, and they won, I think, don't quote us on this, but they won in the millions from Fannie Mae and Wells Fargo in terms of grants. So we'd have to diligence the number before I put it onto this recorded info session, but hopefully that adds a little more color to that answer as well. Just looking at questions. Go ahead.
I see a question from Josh. Opportunities to connect with California Strategic Growth Council. For context, for those out of California, the SGC in California is an arm of the governor's office, but works interagency. And they're the major entity, kind of internal champion for trying to find ways for the state to support industrialized construction. Suffice to say, we're close to them, Josh. So if there's a company in the cohort that makes sense to connect to them, we've helped advise their guidelines on the big funding announcement they just put out a month or two ago. And we're also close with folks in the Department of Energy Loan Programs Office that SGC is trying to connect to their larger pot of funds. So yeah, we're close with them. Definitely potential for connections for companies that are relevant.
What to take next here? So Amy has a question about, will there be an opportunity for accepted entities to contribute to policy creation, and will this cohort work together to advocate in DC and nationally to improve the regulatory environment around this industry need and investment at the federal level? Big question, and I understand why, because it's a big need. So I'll say this, we don't have there's a couple of places where maybe that's going to happen formally. So, Tyler mentioned we'll have a public showcase at the end of the 9-month program. So that'll be in June of 2025. And, it's a ways away, right? We're almost a year away from that. But the vision now is to have a series of sort of regional workshops where we will invite folks who are on the policymaking and regulating side on the regional level to come and check out the innovations that are created and nurtured by the folks in our first cohort, with the idea that, in order for us to be able to really effectuate change and see IC techniques to, really take root in the US, we have to recognize the benefits of having, regional ecosystems that are strong and connected. And those ecosystems will be cross-sector, so they will include folks who are on the policy and public side. In terms of advocating in DC and nationally, obviously there's a decent amount up in the air right now around what, things will look like next year. But I will say, historically, the Turner Labs and HUD have been quite close. And, that was really made manifest in this innovative housing series over the course of the last year. And like, I don't know if you were present for the earlier part of the presentation, Amy, but Tyler and I mentioned Tyler and I had the chance to actually go and participate in the conference that we co-programmed with HUD and the folks over at Ivory Innovations, if you know them as well, and there are a few other stakeholders. And I walked away feeling super energized by just the opportunity to give more visibility and to amplify the voices of folks who really need support from regulators and policymakers to see their innovations take place. And one of the things that kept coming up actually was, how can we at the national level start transitioning to, performance-based building code as opposed to a super prescriptive code? And, things will move at the pace that they can, right? And sometimes things slow down because of changes in administrations, whatever it might be. But I felt super energized because I knew that the decision makers who are in place now were hearing these issues from the mouth of the folks who are trying to, in a market-based way, create more opportunities for these innovations to deliver housing more quickly and start to address this crisis. So all of that to say, that is a strength historically of Turner Labs and our programs and how we support folks who come through our cohort. And it's something that I expect we'll be able to do going forward, regardless of how things ultimately will shake out over the course of the next year.
And I will say one of the kind of placeholder workshops that will probably be relevant to everyone too is navigating public sector partnerships. And so there are different people we can pull in to help do that locally, regionally, statewide, or federally for a few different public agencies. And that can be centered around getting funding from public agencies or like what are the lever points to try and change policy. We can't directly advocate, but we can get the right people in the room to give you a lot of useful tools in that space.
Let's see, what's your vision for how you expect the cohort to interact with each other and with potential partners, investors? That's another good question. So we will have the in-person retreat in the fall where we will bring the cohort together. We'll have at least a couple of the program advisors invited to the retreat for parts of it, at least, so that they can start to build relationships with the folks who are in our cohort. And then depending on availability, we may have some folks from our selection committee, which again, that selection committee includes representatives from Autodesk, Avalon Bay Communities, Hilti, and I expect there'll be another developer and a contractor on board as well. So, I think those sorts of connections will start to take hold during that fall retreat. And then we also are having a series of workshops, usually every 4 to 6 weeks, which this is the curriculum that Tyler was talking about earlier. And the aim with these workshops is not just to have the cohort come together, but we'll have guest speakers and we'll also invite folks who we're calling Friends of the Builders Lab, which will likely be some of the selection committee folks and our program advisors. So the aim with these workshops over the course of the 9-month program is not for it to be like a lecture series. It's like the last thing someone needs, especially a founder. It's opportunities for real learning and for getting visibility with folks who will be part of your network, whether they're in the cohort or they're your future supplier, partner, customer at a large corporate. So hopefully that helps answer your question. And I will say this, like Turner, you asked about investors specifically. We don't, at least for the Builders Lab, we don't provide funding and we don't invest, but there will be amongst the categories of folks that I just mentioned, there are venture capital dollars play there. So hopefully that, helps answer your question in terms of what your visibility might be if you're looking to fundraise or something. Let's see. Amy liked my answer to that question. Thank you. I love positive. What else here?
One at the top we missed. Anonymous. Thank you, Anonymous. What can Builders Lab, or what is Builders Lab Fundamental Value Addition? Spitballing, because I think we have about 19, but I'd say the two fundamental ones. One is company facing, which is probably more relevant to this audience. Basically, we provide really curated mentorship, workshopping, connections. For better and for worse, the industry still operates a lot based on who you know. And we have a deep bench of people that we know and that we can find connection points between. So I think that's our fundamental value add to companies. The second big one for the general industry, though, I think most wannabe partners, be they developers or even policy public sector partners, are desperate for some single source of truth on like what companies are real. And there hasn't been a single source of truth. Venture capital has tried to stake its claim to a lot of different initiatives, but also proven a lot of their sense in what construction innovation is and what realistic innovation works isn't that great a sense. And so everyone's still scrambling. A lot of wannabe partners are still afraid of companies just failing and falling out from under a project commitment. And so to them, I think we're offering some sense of neutrality and due diligence on what companies are real, what strategies are real, and the direct connections to the folks doing the good work beyond just buzzwords.
Thanks for that answer, Tyler. Edie asks about excited to see this program, so are we. That's great. Is there a number of team members on who could participate in the 9-month program? So we are looking for 1 to 2 representatives from each company, with the idea behind that being, obviously the companies are important, and like what you're trying to accomplish as a group is important, and also being able to build those relationships that we think will be fruitful across our cohort and potentially with the folks who are representing other organizations that are not in the cohort but are sort of friends of the lab. Those relationships are people to people relationships. So we are looking for 1 to 2 folks to commit to representing the company over the course of the 9-month program. That said, there's definitely some flexibility there if absolutely necessary. And we've also designed the program to be, sort of similar to the application, like a relatively low lift. We know that founders are busy, right? And we're asking for founders or, someone in the C-suite or leadership team to be representing the company at the Builders Lab or in the Builders Lab program. And so if you think about, the hours sort of requested, it's 1 to 2 hours a week between you and your coach, and then a couple of days for the in-person retreat, and then I would say probably the biggest time commitment will be the international tour. We hope it's a fun time commitment because we'll also be traveling across the pond and checking out what an industrialized construction ecosystem looks like, sort of at a much more mature stage than what it looks like here in the US. But outside of that, it should be a relatively low lift. So hopefully it's not too much to ask for that commitment from 1 to 2 folks from each company in the cohort. Let's see here. I think we've answered most of these questions. Yeah. So we have a couple more minutes. So let's see if any other questions come through in the next minute or 2. Actually, I'll answer this one. So Craig asks, says that they're very early stage, wants to apply, but wants to know if there's a pipeline of future cohort schedule. So there's not a pipeline scheduled, I would say, but our goal is to sort of similar to the Housing Venture Lab. We want to have, an annual cohort, and, we will be looking to bring on cohort 2 in the fall of 2025, right? So we're a new program, and oftentimes with, successful new accelerators, especially the ones that are, run by nonprofits that are trying to solve really hard problems. you learn a lot from your first cohort, and there may be slight change in the programming for your next one. Maybe you learn that there's an even smaller or more sort of specific and unique niche that you can really support, and you have the infrastructure to be able to do so. So who knows whether or not something like that could happen as our program matures and we learn more, but we do anticipate having the builders. We're building the builders lab to be around for a long time. Yeah.
For any true gospel followers of industrialized construction, the process of continuous learning and adaptation and designing for flexibility is very much something we've embedded into our own minds, but also the mind of the Builders Lab program. So
All right. I think that we've talked about the value addition, what we expect for the company, for the program, and what success looks like. Um, all right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Um, Thank you all so much for taking the time, and feel free if you have any questions, or if we missed your question, you can definitely reach out to us separately, and we'll try to get to it. But we really appreciate the time. We know time is really valuable, and I'll just say we're excited to be launching this program at this point. I, I feel like just in the last like month or so, there's been like articles in the New York Times like asking why we as a country have not been able to figure out how to build housing more quickly, even as this housing crisis becomes much more acute. It's much more visible. We're seeing it in downtowns across the country, and we're seeing it even in rural areas. So, at the point of someone who asked a question a little bit earlier, there was something just this week about like how the way that we build elevators sort of reflects some of the challenges with how we build generally. So, point being, there is a lot of momentum, I would say, around finding ways to innovate in this space and to see that innovation really start to proliferate. And we're really excited to be launching now, to be launching at this time. And we're especially excited to see how much enthusiasm there is from this ecosystem, both here in the Bay and across the country, because all of you all signed up to learn more about what we're doing. And whether you apply, which we hope you do, or you have friends who think should apply, we hope you let them know. But at the very least, we're happy we were able to connect with you today and engage. So really appreciate the time.
gonna make me cry my first info session, Ben.
Oh, thanks, Tyler. Tyler's been working on this for a long time. I joined Turner in January, and Tyler has been pushing this forward since joining Turner. And how long have you been at Turner, Tyler?
Over 4 years now, but it's
Yeah,
a full team
yeah.
effort for sure.
Full team effort, but definitely the culmination of a lot of work from folks who came before me, including Tyler. So thankful to have this team on board, and hopefully to have a few of the folks on this call who aren't currently at Turner to be working with us in some capacity or another. So thanks again, and have a great day, everybody.